Hello and welcome to another episode of Elktech. I'm your host Brian, and today we are going to dive even deeper in our series about the internal components of a computer and how they work. So today we are moving on to storage devices, interfaces, and RAID configurations. Alright, so with storage devices, we have many different types. As you're building your computer, you've now chosen your motherboard, your CPU, your cooling, and your memory. So now it's time to pick how we want to store our information. This is also an important one. The first choice we have is an HDD, a hard disk drive. This is one of the oldest types of drives that are still used today. And basically you have three different major speeds that you can choose from. You've got your 5,000, 7,200, and 10,000 RPM hard drives. Now these run at anywhere from 75 to 140 megabytes per second. And as you can see from the picture up in the upper right hand corner, basically what happens is you have this, this platter, and the platter is going to spin on the spindle, and the head is going to read the platter and put the information onto the hard drive using magnetism. So basically what you have in your computer is this hard drive, and you're going to store data to it. But these are slower. Now the faster the RPMs are able to spin, the faster you're able to transfer data off. So a 5,000 RPM hard drive is very, very cheap, but at the same time you're sacrificing speed. You can see it's almost 1/2 the speed of the 10,000 RPM unit that's going to cost you more, but it's going to gain you quite a bit more as far as transfer speeds. Now, your solid state drive is basically a drive with, as you can see, a bunch of chips on it. Now, solid state drives are quite a bit more expensive than your hard drives. In fact, for 1 terabyte drive at 7,200 RPMs, you could probably pick that up now for about 20, 30 bucks, and that's for a full terabyte. A solid state drive, on the other hand, to pick up one solid state drive at only 126 gigabytes, you're probably going to spend about 40-50 bucks. So you'll spend more for less, but what you get is speed. Your solid state drive can transfer up to 6 gigabytes per second. It is a dramatic increase for your computer. It's highly recommended that you get at least one solid state drive for your computer where you can actually store your applications. And then what many people will do is actually run a second hard drive, a hard disk drive, to store their data, such as your Word documents and so stuff like that, your pictures. Alright, so that would be one recommendation that you can do. Now, the next thing you could do is you could use what's called a hybrid drive. Now, the hybrid drive, as you can kind of see, it has some of the chips that a solid state drive has, but it also has the spinning disk that your hard disk drive has. Now, the purpose of this is to actually use the solid state drive to act as a cache for the data that's being stored on the hard drive. It increases the overall performance by keeping copies of the most frequently used data on the faster SSD drive instead of the spinning hard disk drive. Now, these are going to cost significantly less than a solid state drive, but at the same time you're still not getting that absolute speed of the solid state drive. So these hybrid drives can be absolutely great, especially if you're on a budget, you want to increase your speed but still maintain a budget. This is the perfect option. A tape drive is a drive that usually isn't used as much for installing an operating system. It's used more for massive amounts of storage. Now, a tape drive can be up to 10 terabytes or higher, and it uses what looks like old cassette tapes. And basically, it's a magnetic strip around the spindle, and they function almost exactly like your the old school tapes that some of us may actually remember. Now, again, what these are nice for is that one of these cassettes can hold 10 terabytes or more. So you can use this for very large backups of entire server systems, so on and so forth. Your flash drives and your CD-ROM, DVD-ROM drives. Now these are fun because your flash drives are tiny. As you can see in the picture on the left, they can be even smaller than a nickel. In fact, the smaller micro SD card that's in there is actually smaller than a dime. Flash drives are where we like to keep more of our portable data. Now, they're very fast. They can be up to 128 gigabytes of total storage, and the speeds at those, depending on whether or not you get the 2.0 or the 3.0, can be up to 9.5 megabytes per second write speed of the 2.0 and up to 286.2 megabytes per second for the write speed for the 3.0. Now that's up to. That does not mean that they are going to be that high. You're going to want to look at that as you are purchasing your flash drives, because the more expensive it is, the faster that write speed is going to be. If you find a really cheap 128 gigabyte flash drive, 9 times out of 10 it's because that write speed is much lower than what it could be. Your CD-ROM drives, obviously that's where you can put your CD in and you can write to that disk. Now a disk for a CD is only up to about 900 megabytes of storage. It's not a lot of space. Now your DVD-ROMs, on the other hand, typically you'll find them at 4.7 gigabytes of storage, but they can actually get up to 8.4 gigabytes if you really spend the money on some of the newer types. But typically what you'll find is the 4.7 gigabytes, which is needed in order to write movies and such to your DVDs. Now these are also what we would call peripheral or optical drives. These are not drives that we need for the basic operation of the computer. So first you want to pick your solid state drive, hard disk drive, or hybrid drive to put your operating system on. Okay. Now you can use a combination of those drives without a RAID configuration if you want to, which means that you have 2 separate drives. One could be just for your operating system and the other could be for your file storage. Choose that however you need it. You're probably not going to want to use a hybrid drive for just the storage of information, though. That's built more to be your budget type drive for replacing the ability to get a solid state. So really look at that and make sure that you pick the right one with the right speed. We're going to kind of go over speeds here in a sec as well. Your optical drive, or your flash drives and CD-ROM drives, that's what you'll need to pick next, and that's basically going to be how you're going to store data and how you're going to input data into your computer. You may want both. As far as your connection types go, I'm going to point out the old IDE connections on the left, just because if you're going for your A+ certification, that may come up. That long connector right there is what is your IDE connector. I don't believe you'll need to know too many specifics about it, but you may need to know what it looks like just in case. What we use now is SATA, is a SATA connection, so a serial ATA connection, which, as you can see, conserves a lot of space on the motherboard. You can, on the right there, you have a total of 12 SATA connections right there on that motherboard, allowing for multiple drives. Your CD-ROM drives are going to plug in through the SATA connection, as well as your hard drives. Hard disk drive or solid state, or even the hybrid drive, will connect using that SATA. Now you have there the eSATA. That's your external SATA, in case you had some kind of an external connection that you wanted to make. Some computers have that ability on them. However, it's not going to be a focus of this. SATA is, however, going to be a focus of this, because SATA is really important. You have a couple of different speeds with your SATA connections. The old SATA 1 connections could do 1.5 gigabytes per second. SATA 2 later came out with the ability to do 3 gigabytes per second, and currently what we have out is SATA 3, which is capable of up to 6 gigabytes per second. So 9 times out of 10, go all the way back to among one of our first videos when we did the motherboard. We're going to want to look at which SATA type our motherboard has, because that's going to determine how fast of a connection we're going to get to the hard drive, and how much we're actually going to get out of that hard drive. So again, once again, we're coming back to just how important it is to select the right motherboard, because that's the backbone. It's going to determine everything else in the system as far as what we can do and what we can't do. So make sure that you have the right speed that you want for that. The next thing that we're going to look at are USB type connections. These are not going to actually connect your internal hard drives, but they're going to connect your external type devices, such as your flash drives, your cameras, your other devices, so on and so forth. So you have your USB Type A. That's the one that we're most used to. That's what your flash drives are going to come with. That's going to be the one you're going to see most often. Then you have your USB Type B. This one you don't see quite as much. This one is going to be on the side of like the printer or some other type of device where you plug it in there, and then you'll see the USB Type A on the other side that plugs into the computer. Then you have your micro USB B, and that's going to plug in a lot of your Android devices, small cameras, so on and so forth. And then lastly, you have your USB Mini B, which is also going to plug in a lot of your peripherals. Again, those are both the micro B and mini B are going to be on the side of the device. You're not going to find that those plug-ins on the back of your computer. You're going to plug those in, and what you're going to see on the computer side on the other end of those cables from B, micro B, and mini B is the Type A on the other side that plugs into the computer. It's also important to note the speed of your USB. So as you start to really look at your what type of USB you're going to get, your USB 3.0 can transfer up to 5 gigabytes per second. Your USB 3.1 can actually do 10 gigabytes per second or more, as well as your Thunderbolt 2s is the same thing. They can transfer quite a bit. Your eSATA is only going to be 3 gigabytes per second, and then you can get down into your USB 2, which is only 480 megabytes per second, FireWire 800, so on and so forth. So also when you're buying devices, make sure you know what their transfer speeds are, because that could be very important to you as the user to make sure that you have a USB connection that is going to work well for you. The last thing that we're going to talk about is grouping your storage devices. Now, there is a word that we like to use in the computer industry that is called redundancy. Okay, so what redundancy basically means is that if you have something fail, you have another way of backing up that information. RAID is not usually used very much in the home type sector. It's used quite a bit in businesses, servers, things like that, but RAID is not a bad way to go at home if you have the ability. So one of the first things that we need to look at about RAID, it's a redundant array of independent disks. So you have multiple independent disks that are going to work together in a redundant array. There's a couple of terms we need to know. First is parity. Parity is detecting data errors, while striping is writing data across multiple hard drives. Mirroring stores duplicate data on a second hard drive. So 2 hard drives, same data. Okay? This is important because there are multiple RAID configurations. RAID 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10. Alright? So what's really important about these, I'm only going to go over a couple of them here, but your RAID 0, for example, you need a minimum of 2 hard drives, and what it's going to do is it's going to do your striping without redundancy. So you have 2 hard drives, it's going to go through and it's going to look for data correction. Okay? RAID 1 is a minimum of 2 hard drives, and it's going to mirror the drives. So it's going to make a copy of whatever you put on the first drive onto the second drive. Okay? We're going to skip all the way down to RAID 5, which is a minimum of 3 hard drives, and you're going to do a combo of striping and parity. So what does that mean? That means that we're going to stripe data across all 3 drives, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to look for data errors as it's striping that information. Skip down to RAID 10. RAID 10 is a really nice way of doing things if you have the drives. It's a minimum of 4 drives. And what you're going to do is you're going to do a mirrored set of striped data. So in RAID 10 with only 4 hard drives, what you're going to be doing then is essentially you're going to have 2 drives where you're going to stripe across 2 drives, and then you're going to have a second set of 2 drives where you're going to stripe across those 2 drives. This way, if, say, for example, you have hard drive say just disk 1 in your first set goes down, you can then replace that drive and take disk 3 in your second set, and you can then copy that information to disk 1, your new disk 1 in your first set, and retrieve that data. You haven't lost too much. All right, so it's like I said, a really nice way of doing things, but RAID isn't exactly the most comprehensive way of going. If you are a video gamer, don't even think about doing this. This isn't going to be a good idea for you, as this massively slows down your write speeds to your hard drives and doesn't allow you to get your data as quickly. So if you're playing a video game of some kind, you really want just a single solid state drive, and just do frequent backups somewhere else. RAID configuration is more for data that you can't afford to lose, such as a home business or something like that. So I hope that this gives you a little bit understanding of the storage in your drives. Again, the hard drive is permanent storage, so you're going to store your operating system on whichever hard drive you choose, hard drive, solid state drive, so on and so forth. This drive is where you're going to store your pictures, your documents, your programs, all of that kind of stuff. So you really want to take your time and be able to choose the right one for your computer. Make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're not there already. It's in the comments below. Also, if you're not already at my website, it's in the comments below. Check that out for the rest of the videos in this tutorial series. And also make sure to go there and stop and check out some of the other videos, other series that I have on there. Many tips, tricks, and other how-tos. So, thanks for watching.